Why is it that you feel you can't afford your life? Other people seem to be doing just fine and they may even make less than you. This can be extremely frustrating, especially if you're making a good income. Hi, I'm Anthony and I built a $400,000 portfolio before the age of 25 with an ordinary income. And I bring this up not to flex, but instead because I've seen this from both sides. And you may not be doing anything that's outrageously reckless. You could have a reasonable house, a reasonable car, reasonable subscriptions and convenience and that sort of thing. And yet, living a lifestyle that seems to be very reasonable, you still feel like you just can't get ahead. It's as though you get paid and then the money's gone before you know it. You may even feel like you're in the same position than before you started making a good income. If you hear that and think, yeah, that's me, then in this video, we're going to be talking about why that's happening. It's due to a specific reason that is addressable, and we'll be going over a 3-step process to lighten your financial burden so you feel more comfortable and have more money to start investing and building for your future. Before we talk about the solution, we need to talk about the issue and find out why it's happening, because it may not be exactly what you think it is. Second, we're going to measure how locked in your lifestyle is based on your specific situation. And then, third, we're going to go over the 3-step process so that we can give you some breathing room so you can start investing and building a portfolio of your own. A lot of people think that their lifestyle feels heavy and they feel overburdened by finances due to expensive purchases. Now, that is one of the aspects of it, but it's not even the main one. I know that sounds crazy. How could expensive purchases not be the main issue? But stay with me. I had a friend who was making a lot of money. In fact, professionally, he was killing it. For this story, we can call him Chad. Chad had a sweet new car. I'm talking leather interior, pretty much every upgrade that you could think of. It was a brand new car. He had a nice watch, nice clothes. He had an expensive lifestyle. We both worked in the hospital, and when I took my lunch break, he was also on his lunch break, and I was talking to him about something that I was having to pay to have repaired to my house. I believe, if I remember correctly, I was getting my windows replaced, and he kind of looked at me with disbelief. He couldn't understand how it was that, because he knew how much money I was making, and he knew that he was making more. He couldn't understand how I had enough money to pay for a down payment on a house when he himself couldn't afford that. And you know, what's crazy to me is I think I was just as surprised as he was, because I had a good idea about how much money he was making, and I couldn't really wrap my mind around how he couldn't have enough money saved for a down payment on a house. Now you're probably thinking, Anthony, why are you telling me this story about Chad and his sweet car? Well, the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's not about how expensive things you purchase are, it's about how permanent they are. For his car, he had a monthly payment that took away a big portion of his only tool to build wealth, which is our income. And there's a big difference here between having expensive purchases and having permanent purchases. Permanent purchases is already predetermined, your money is already spoken for before you even earn it. And for Chad, he was committed to paying for his car and paying for all of the luxury items that he had financed. And his income was completely spoken for, and he didn't have any room for building or saving. At surface level, these kind of lifestyles look really fun, and you may even be envious of them. They may be the people you're seeing on Instagram, but they must continue to make that income that they're making to uphold that lifestyle. As soon as they stop making that income, they no longer can uphold that lifestyle anymore, and they're one paycheck away from losing everything. And this brings us to our core issue. Your income is already spoken for before you make it. These permanent expenses are things like housing, transportation, health insurance, car insurance, childcare. There's a lot of things that can fall into this category, which is why it can take your income super quickly. And none one of them alone is the culprit to all of your problems. Rather, it's the sum of all of them that is continuing to push you down and take your paychecks. Now, variable spending tends to get a bad name for everything. It gets blamed for why you're feeling financially behind because you went out and ate for $40. Now, if you're making $5,000 after taxes, the $40 that you spent to go out and eat isn't the problem. Now, of course, if you go out and eat multiple times out of the week, it is going to be your problem. But my point is that that's not the main culprit to your problems. It's the fact that your paychecks are already going somewhere before you even get them. These fixed expenses often put an invisible pressure on you, and they're quote unquote unavoidable. And we're going to get into that later because there are some things that you can do to reduce that permanent pay obligation that you have. These fixed costs don't just build up overnight, and they're not just one reckless decision. They're things that accumulate over time that seem reasonable. For example, if you start making some more money at work and you think, oh, now I can afford a slightly more expensive car, or you can afford to go out and eat a little bit more, or you can afford a slightly larger place to live or a slightly nicer place to live, instead of taking that money and using that to start building wealth and investing. These permanent expenses stacked together end up being used synergistically against you, taking your income away and putting you into a situation where you may even be making negative per month. If you're in a position where you want to start building your portfolio and your investments and start contributing towards building a net worth, or if you already have started and you want to speed things up a little bit, you absolutely have to know this one number. This number is called the fixed cost ratio. This is going to be your monthly cost divided by your monthly income. So, for example, if you make $8,000 per month and your fixed living expenses are $4,800 per month, then your fixed cost ratio is going to be 60%. So now, if you have to pause the video, that's perfectly fine, because we're going to go in and see where you lie and how fixed your lifestyle truly is. As a general rule of thumb, under 40% fixed cost ratio gives you a very flexible lifestyle. A fixed cost ratio of 40 to 50% is okay. It could be a little bit more tight, but that's all right. A fixed cost ratio of over 50% is going to be more rigid, and you have to be very structured and intentional if you want to end up building wealth. The higher your fixed cost ratio is, the less money you have for investing, the less money you have for savings, and the less money you have for mobility and flexibility in your lifestyle. The lower your fixed cost ratio is, the more money you have to invest, you have to save, and the more flexibility that it gives you in life. If your fixed cost ratio is significantly over 50%, my intention isn't to scare you. It's just to make you aware of this and to provide you with some advice so that you can reduce your fixed cost ratio so you can start living more comfortably. Now let's get into the 3-step system to make an expensive lifestyle more affordable. Step 1, you're going to find out what all your fixed expenses are and list them down. List every single reoccurring expense regardless to how big or how small it is. And it's super important that you remain objective. Don't judge each reoccurring charge. Just list it out. If it's reoccurring, list it. Step 1 is going to be in the gathering data phase. So right now we're just trying to list out everything that we have so that we know exactly what our situation looks like. And a lot of the times for people, this is a big aha moment. I want to read you something from the book, The Art of War. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. The reason I bring this up is because now you know what your battle is. No more fighting in the dark or battling with confusion. Step 2, identify what's truly fixed and what's adjustable. Ask yourself this question: how much of what I'm committed to can I realistically adjust? Not all financial obligations are the same, and I like to think of this as a financial Jenga. If you've ever played Jenga before, you're basically feeling all the blocks trying to find which one's loose. If you go to push one and, oh, that one's not budging, that's not the one you go after. But if you go to push one and it doesn't seem to be in there too tight and it doesn't make the whole building fall down, then there you found your block to remove. This is going to be the same sort of situation. You're going to analyze all the data that you gathered from step 1 and find those loose blocks to take out. I do want to make one thing clear though. Some expenses are harder to change than others. And for those bigger expenses such as housing, those are a lot harder to change, so you have to get a little bit more creative, and this won't work for everybody. But if you have extra bedrooms in your house that you're not using, that you're able to rent out and you feel comfortable doing that, that's a way you can reduce that expense. If you have a guest house on your property, you can rent that out. You maybe even use Airbnb or Furnish Finder for short-term rentals. If you have RV hookups on your property, you can rent that out to somebody, but just be sure you're charging them for the electricity and the water. If you happen to have property where people can host photography sessions or weddings, whatever it is that you have in your tool belt to start making money off of your biggest expense to offset that cost, you should do that if you feel comfortable with it. Another one is like childcare. If you have family who can watch your children instead and you feel comfortable asking them to do that, that can save you a lot of money as well. Or finding an employer or seeing if your employer already offers a program that will cover that cost. Moving on to some of the soft fixed expenses that are easier to change. Think about things like home insurance and car insurance. See if you can negotiate or find somebody who's offering a better price with the same coverage. Looking at your subscriptions like Netflix, Hulu, all of those sort of things, you may be surprised with how many that you have, and you may even be paying for more than one at a time. Look at your phone plan. Maybe there's more affordable carrier that you can switch to, or maybe you can negotiate your current terms. On paper, these expenses look fixed, but sometimes they're not as fixed as you think they are. They may be the loose Jenga blocks that you can find, and then you can reduce those costs, and each cost does add up. These costs look fixed, but in reality, only some of them are. So to sum step 2 up simply, take the data that you've gathered from step 1, put that in one column, and try finding which ones in that column are adjustable that you can either reduce or eliminate. And when you start noticing that you're able to eliminate some of these fixed expenses and you start lowering your fixed cost ratio, and now you have more money at your disposal, this is what's known as the self-efficiency concept. I want to read you the definition of self-efficiency. Self-efficiency is the belief that you are capable of succeeding at a specific task. Your brain doesn't update confidence from motivation. It updates your confidence level based off of the success that you're experiencing. So if you're able to fix your fixed cost ratio and give yourself a little bit of breathing room so you can start investing, you're going to give yourself and train your brain that you are able to accomplish the goals that you set for yourself. This is why it's super important not to underestimate the small wins. You're telling yourself, I did this, so therefore I can do that as well. Step 3 is probably the most important step out of all of these, because if you neglect to focus on step 3, all of the work that you spend in step 1 and step 2 will just be wasted. Step 3 is adding a filter before adding any new fixed expenses. When you add a filter before adding in new fixed expenses, this puts a barrier into these things just sneaking up and accumulating over time. You've worked hard in step 1 and 2 to get rid of these fixed expenses and to reduce your fixed cost ratio. Before adding anything new, ask yourself, do I need this, or can I exchange it for another fixed expense that I already have? If you're not able to trade this expense for something else, another powerful way to prevent yourself from adding stuff to your fixed expenses is put that number of whatever it costs. Say the fixed expense is $30 per month. Look up a compound interest calculator and put in there $30 per month, calculated at, say, a 10% interest over 15 years. Whatever that amount is how much money that you would be getting if you invested rather than putting it towards a fixed expense. And that may motivate you not to add it to your fixed expense list. If your lifestyle felt heavy before and you're able to improve it, please use step 3, prevent these things from building back up, and start watching your portfolio build. If you found this video to be helpful or interesting, you should check this video out. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider subscribing. I'm going to be posting videos every single Saturday.